know that about pharmacy technicians. A lot of people don't know that we are behind the epidurals. You just feel so nervous because everything is just so new, and that's completely normal. A lot of times the things that have to be batched and pre-made are made by who? Us. Hey y'all, glad you came. I'm Monique. Welcome and welcome back. Today we're talking all things IV room inpatient hospital setting. Okay. Now, for that purpose, I do have on these two items, as you can see. Not to worry, I will be taking them off here shortly. But before I do, I want to talk about them. So, the very first thing that you are going to have to apply before stepping foot into an IV room to make any medications is going to be something called PPE. That stands for personal protective equipment. Now, I don't have all of it on right now, obviously, but I do have on the head cover. I have on the mask. There's also gloves. It's going to be a white jacket. It's also going to be a white jacket that's called a gown. And then you're going to have your shoe covers as well. And the thing about the shoe covers is that they have to cover your skin. So if you have on shoes that expose your ankles, then we have, long shoe covers that cover the ankle almost up to the knee, right? And so the point here is no skin, showing as much as possible. Obviously, you have your eyes out. But yes, if you wear glasses, there are things to do for that as well. You can wear your glasses, but there are different things to help your glasses not to fog up while you're in the IV room. In addition to that, when you are cleaning certain parts of the IV room and with certain cleaners, then you have the option of wearing a bigger mask that is stronger and more protective, and also a face shield to cover your eyes. So there are levels to PPE depending on what you are doing, but the majority of time in an inpatient hospital setting, you're going to be wearing what you see me wearing here, which is, like I said, the head cover, the mask, the gloves, the white gown, and the shoe covers. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the conversation. All right, and so in real life, one of the things that happens when you take off your head cover is that the little creases of the bonnet can be left in your forehead. So if you see that on this video, then that's what that is. Also, another point is you see me with no makeup. That is also key. Working in the IV room, you cannot wear makeup. Now, that's where I work. Again, these videos are based on my experience. So with the IV room that I work in, there's actually makeup removers, wipes, before you actually put on all of your PPE. So yes, no makeup. And as you can see in this video, for the purposes of this video, I have on no makeup. All right, so I usually wear like a little bit of gloss or something, something like that, or maybe like a little bit of chapstick or something like that. Not saying that, but you're full on foundation and things like that. And why is that, scientifically speaking? Because those things just cause debris in the air, and the air and the area in the IV room have to be super clean and as low on bacteria as possible, right? And so you don't want to, encourage any type of growth in the IV room area because of the bacteria that you're bringing in on your skin, okay? So that is that. So that's a few things, right, that I want to talk about. Now, there are many things that go into working into the IV room. I don't have notes. I want to just naturally talk about it and, some of the things that come to my mind first. So first up is how to actually get a job working in the IV room. So the first step is to actually get a job working in the hospital pharmacy setting and or a setting where there is an IV room. There are many different settings that have IV rooms. I personally only know about the inpatient hospital setting. That's the only one that I know about, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So once you get hired, you may not be hired automatically to work in the IV room because if you ask me, I do think that the IV room does take experience. Most likely, if you've never worked in the hospital pharmacy, they're not going to put you in the IV room at the very beginning unless they truly need the help. And at that point, they'll be training you, right? However, most likely you will be delivering medications, you will be, picking medications, you'll be doing other things in the hospital pharmacy that do not involve the IV room. But you can ask them, to say, hey, I want to be trained on IVs. I want to grow in my skill set. And hey, that's a good thing. And they may be like, yeah, that's great. That way we can have you on if someone calls out, if someone gets sick, or anything like that. And when you present that to them, present it to your manager like that. Present it as saying that you want to help out the team, you want to do more, you want to broaden your skill set because you want to be able to help when and if something happens and someone cannot come to work. You want to be able to come, right? That is business talk. That at that point you're benefiting them and not just yourself. It is a business. And so that's how you want to talk about it, right? How you want to go about asking to further your skill set on their dime. Because once you actually have this skill set, you then can use this skill set for life within your career as a pharmacy technician. However, you do want to be careful once you get into the IV room. So, a few things I want to talk about too, the mental mindset before going into the IV room. First of all, a lot of people, when working in pharmacy, they could be very disgruntled about their pay. Maybe like, I don't get paid enough, da da da. I advise you that if you are disgruntled about your pay, then do not add skill sets. And the reason is because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get paid more for learning this skill set. I still think it's good to learn, but don't expect more money because you know how to do IVs. I have literally worked with people who, in my opinion, are so skilled and yet never made $2 more for having that skill, right? So, like I said, if you're disgruntled about money, then, or about pay, salary, whatever, think twice because you will be working a little bit harder in the IV room and your job is that much more important. So just think about that. Now, if they're giving an incentive, that's a little bit different. But if not, just know that you are just, adding a skill set to your belt of skill sets. Okay. Just put that out there. So that's not a problem that I have, but that could be a problem that someone else has. So I feel like I am, being compensated for whatever I do in the inpatient pharmacy that I work in. Okay, so now we have that out of the way. That mental mindset is, like I said, learning a new skill set for the betterment of your skill sets and also to be able to help out the company or the hospital that you work for. Also, the second mental mindset is that you are doing some very serious work. Okay. When you're working out on the floor in the pharmacy, you're most likely, pulling vials of medications and you're pulling a pill form of medication and things of this nature that have to go through several different processes in the body to actually be effective, right? Now, of course, the vial medication is liquid most likely, or powder, and so that is pretty much intravenous as well. But when you're doing the medication pill picking and things like that, remember that's having to go through a different system, and so it's a little different. More interventions can be made if a mistake happens on the part of medical staff, right? But when it comes to IVs, you are making medication that goes directly into the veins of patients. Take that very, very seriously, okay? And that's why I say if you're disgruntled about money, do not work there because you need to be very serious and you do not need to be lackadaisical nor lazy when it comes to making these patients medication because you are essentially, it is you, the pharmacist, the nurse, the doctor, the patient. All these things come into play before this medication makes into the veins of the patient. Before this medication makes into the veins of the patient. And so it's a very serious matter. And people don't know that about pharmacy technicians. A lot of people don't know that we are behind the epidurals. We are behind the syringes that are full of the medication that relieves someone's pain. We are, behind the antibiotic that is going to help get rid of pneumonia. We are behind all of that. We are behind the IV bags that you see hanging from a pole when you walk into your loved one's room, right? There are some things that come pre-made, but even with that, a lot of times the things that have to be batched and pre-made are made by who? Us, the pharmacy technicians. Okay. So a few medications that you may run into when working in the pharmacy are going to be things like, of course, antibiotics. You're going to have antivirals. You're going to have iron. That's a big one. You're going to have just a variety of things that are things that are helping to get rid of disease in an individual or to help treat a specific medical issue that a patient is having. And so that being the case, like I said, what you're making is very important. It works very, very fast. Therefore, I take it upon myself to double check myself. Of course, this is actually getting checked by the pharmacist, of course, but I don't even want there to be any issues. I don't want anything to be sent back to me, right? And so I make sure to double check everything I do because I take it very seriously and I treat it as if it was going into the body of one of my loved ones. So if I'm in the hospital, I would want the technician making my medication to be very, very industrious about the way that they're making things, right? Not being lazy and really being careful about their technique as well, because technique does matter. There are things that you cannot do while working in the IV room, and we're going to get into that next. All right, so the next thing is your workstation. So your workstation looks a lot different when working in the IV room. First off, when you work in the IV room, you're going to see these things called IV hoods. And these IV hoods are big. Some of them may be a little shorter than others, but most of them are, pretty big. And you may have 1 to 2 to 3 in the IV room, maybe 4. And this is your hood. This is where you're going to work. This is where you're going to do your work. What's happening in that hood is you have this air blowing, constantly cleaning out and filtering the air in that area that you're making medications in. So it's a pressure that's in there when you're in there, right? And you'll hear it. You'll hear it and you may feel it if you're not used to it. Okay. And so that's what's happening. All that's happening is for the betterment of the medication. That PPE that you put on, yeah, it's for personal protective equipment, but also is to protect the patient from you. We don't want anything on us to get into the patient's medication. So at the end of the day, it's really for patient safety. Okay. So your safety and patient safety. And so when you work in these IV hoods, there are certain techniques that you have to follow as far as making sure that that air flowing in that IV hood is always flowing in a way that it's removing any type of bacteria or anything like that from things that you're using. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to say this word on the screen. You'll know what I'm trying to say. But these have to stay very sterile. Okay. Everything has to stay very, very sterile. Okay. So that is why, that air is flowing through that hood, right? And so there are certain things you have to keep in mind when you're being trained. They probably will tell you these things. You can also do the research yourself, but they'll show you, what not to do, how to handle the and the syringe, obviously, to make sure that you are having the proper technique when doing these things. Okay. I'm going to put the name of the technique on the screen as well. That way you can do your research if you would like to. Okay. This technique is very important because this sets you apart from other people who do not use this technique. As a matter of fact, if someone is not using this technique, they most likely will not be in the IV room for very long. Okay. All right. So next up, let's talk about some of the fears of working in the IV room. One of the biggest fears is actually accidentally poking yourself with the right. That is probably going to happen. I'm just letting you know now. There are certain protocols that you go through when that does happen. I encourage you to really ask your trainer of different techniques that they use to avoid poking themselves, right? Because that's going to help you in the long run. That has happened to me in the past accidentally. It just happens, right? But there are certain techniques such as like scooping that you can do to where you're not directly recapping the onto the syringe and therefore increasing the likelihood of you sticking yourself. And you definitely do not want to stick yourself when you have actual medication inside of the yes. These things I do not want to say on YouTube. So yes, but we're talking about pharmacy, so it's kind of hard not to say those words because that's what you work with essentially all day long. So anyway, you get the point, right? And so that being the case, that is something that, you have to be careful of as well. And trust me, it won't happen a lot, but it probably will happen once or twice, if not 3 times, depending on the longevity of how long that you work in the IV room and how many shifts that you actually have in the IV room. You know, the likelihood of something happening, really rises. That probability rises the more you're exposed to it. Okay. And so there you have that. So that's a fear that people have, but don't worry, it doesn't happen all the time. And there are definitely techniques to help you avoid that happening really ever. So yeah, one of the main things is to take your time, do not go too fast, and be careful. All right. Next thing, we're going to get into some of the things that some of the personalities that work in the IV room and how sometimes working in the IV room can be discouraging. When you first get there, you're going to notice that people work at different speeds. There are people who work very, very fast, and they're making these batch medications and these other medications super fast. And you look at them and you're like, how are you making that so fast? You know how? Because, like I just said, they make it all the time. So they have found tricks to help them to go faster. Okay. You can ask them. I'm not going to say they're going to tell you, but you can ask them because remember, their tricks of the trade are really job security. And so there's that. But there may be some of them who may be willing to help you out. And along the way, you're going to find your own tricks as well, as long as they are, going to keep everything sterile and clean, right? And so, that being the case, that is something that you'll see. Please do not let that intimidate you because the natural human inclination is for it to intimidate you. But please keep in mind what I'm telling you right now is that those technicians probably have been doing this a lot longer than you. Even if they have been doing it longer than you, they may have done that particular medication compounding, 100 times. Literally, they may have made it 100 times. And so that being the case, they're going to have, a greater hold on it than you. See, what's going to happen with you is that when you go in there and you're new, a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are happening. The first thing that's happening is you're nervous. Okay, because you're like, oh my goodness, am I gonna make this right? Am I follow directions right? Oh my, am I gonna, poke myself? What is gonna happen? And, it's just a lot because you have to know which syringe to get. You have to know how much medication you're putting in the how much medication you're putting in the bag or the syringe or whatever. And it is just, it's a lot. It's a lot on you anxiety wise because you're so nervous and you don't want to do anything wrong. And you also just have this tremendous pressure on you because you just feel so nervous because everything is just so new and that's completely normal. And because of that, you're going to go super duper slow. I'm speaking from experience, you guys. Um, do not let that stop you from continuing on. Trust me, after about 2 weeks of, consistently being trained and 2 weeks of consistently being in the IV room and watching others that you view as experts at their job, you are going to pick up the tricks. You're going to pick up the techniques. You're going to pick up everything. Pick up good ones, not bad ones. If you hear of someone that is talked about in the IV room as being really bad at what they do not adopt their habits, okay? Adopt the habits of people who are considered experts in the IV room. Watch them. Again, they may not be willing to teach you sometimes. They may not. But if you watch them and then you strategically ask questions, then you'll learn. Pay attention because we also work on a computer in the IV room. It's not just the IV hood. There's also a system that we use that's sitting right beside us. Okay. And that system also has its tricks and techniques as well. So people will sit there and legit watch you struggle and not help you. That's a reality. That's why you have to make sure you are asking questions. Okay. And if possible, ask someone that you think will answer you correctly. So, yeah. Also, you got to have kind of thick skin working in the IV room because I feel like the IV room is kind of like, to me, it's kind of like, it's something where people are advanced. I want to say it's advanced practice of pharmacy. That's what I want to say, pharmacy technician, because you got to be serious and you got to be good at what you do because you're making important medications and you cannot be sloppy or messy because we have to keep all things sterile. So I do feel like people will watch you. They will watch how you're making things. They will make little comments and statements. Now, the thing about me is that I've actually done IV for a long time. I've done IV years ago. I do IV now. So I actually already had some background in the IV room before actually working my current position in the IV room. So that's good for me because I actually know some stuff and I have some muscle memory. I'm not new to the IV room, but I may be new to their IV room. You see what I'm saying? So if that's the case, I suggest that if you also, like me, had IV experience at a different hospital or a different facility, use that to help you get into the IV room. But once you get in the IV room, don't act like you know everything, because every facility is different. So have some humility on you, okay? And don't act like you know everything, because you don't. And you don't know how their IV room works. So you need to be quiet and you need to learn the tricks of the trade so that you too can be someone who is an advanced IV tech in that particular hospital setting or that particular facility. Okay, so that's all I have. I feel like I kind of covered, some of the things that happen in the IV room. But guys, just, be strong, have thick skin, understand you're a beginner, even if you have some experience in the past, you're a beginner in that particular pharmacy. Take your time, speak up about things that would like to know about. Also, I'm going to give you a suggestion here. If I'm PRN, guys, so I work as needed. So a lot of things that the full-time technicians are doing, I don't have to do. But I will say this: if you're working in the IV room, there is this aspect called cleaning. I've mentioned this before. I am not someone who is a fan of the things that they use to clean, because they are chemical based, and chemical based for good reason, because the room has to be completely sterile. Please understand that these things do have smells to them that are not pleasant. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that you will need extra layers of protective equipment to protect yourself from the chemical based cleansers. All right, so if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section below the video. If you guys work in the IV room, let me know your experience. If you, liked it, if you didn't like it, if you work there and you love it, whatever the case may be. I am PRN, and so I do a variety of different tasks at my job, which do include the IV room. So anyway, I have fun making this video for you guys. I've been wanting to make this one, and like I said, I look forward to hearing your comments below the video in the description section. So yes, I hope that you guys have a productive and peaceful rest of your day,